The scent of roasting turkey and pine from the oversized Christmas tree always filled my brother-in-law's house during the holidays. It was a smell that should have meant warmth, family, and joy. For me, it had become the scent of anxiety. For 4 years, I had stood in that living room, a polite smile fixed on my face, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. This year was no different. My son, Sam, then a bright-eyed 8-year-old with a mop of sandy hair and a gap-toothed grin, was chasing his younger cousins around the sprawling sofa, his laughter the purest sound in a room full of strained pleasantries. My husband, Mark, was deep in conversation with his father, their heads bent together over a shared memory. I watched them, a familiar ache settling in. They were good people, my husband's family. On the surface, they were loud, boisterous, and always ready with a backslapping welcome. But beneath the veneer of familial warmth, there was an unspoken current, a subtle exclusion that was directed with surgical precision at my son. The moment always came, as predictable as the setting sun. My sister-in-law, Amanda, would clap her hands together, her voice cutting through the cheerful chaos. "Photo time! Everyone over by the fireplace!" It was a well-oiled machine. The grandparents would be seated, the various aunts and uncles and their children arranging themselves in a practiced tableau of familial bliss. And every single time, as I would start to guide Sam towards the group, a gentle but firm hand would land on my arm. It was always Amanda. "Oh, Eleanor," she'd say, her voice syrupy sweet, a smile on her lips that never quite reached her eyes. "Let's just get one of the original family first. You know, the grandkids. It'll be quicker." The first time it happened, I was confused. Sam was a grandchild, just like her own 2 children. I opened my mouth to say so, but Mark's cousin nudged me, saying, "Don't worry, we'll do a big group one after." I was new to the family then, eager to please, and I didn't want to make waves, so I stepped back, pulling a confused Sam with me. I watched as the flash went off, immortalizing a perfect family portrait. A perfect family, without my son. The promised big group photo never happened. The moment passed, conversations resumed, and the omission was swallowed by the festive noise. That was 4 years ago. It happened at Christmas, at Easter, at the annual summer barbecue, and at birthdays. A collection of beautiful, professional-looking photos began to adorn the walls of my in-laws' home, a gallery of smiling faces that chronicled the growth of the children. But one child was conspicuously missing. My child. The excuses varied. "Let's just get the cousins who live in town." "Oh, the light is fading, we have to be quick." "Sam is so full of energy. He won't stand still, let's just do the others first." I stayed quiet. I told myself I was keeping the peace. I told myself that Sam, in his innocent youth, didn't notice. But as he got older, he did. Last Christmas, at 7, he'd turned to me after being subtly steered away from the fireplace and asked, his voice small, "Mom, why am I not in the pictures with everyone else?" The question was a dagger to my heart. I had no answer for him, only a hollow excuse that tasted like ash in my mouth. That night, I cried myself to sleep. The silence from my husband beside me, a deafening roar of complicity. I realized my silence wasn't protecting anyone. It was teaching my son that his place in his own family was conditional. The quiet compliance had to end. The seed of an idea, a quiet rebellion, began to sprout in the barren ground of my resentment. The year that followed was one of quiet observation. My anger, once a simmering pot of unspoken resentment, began to cool and harden into something more solid. Resolve. I started to watch Amanda not as a sister-in-law, but as an anthropologist studies a subject. Her obsession with these staged family moments was fascinating in its intensity. She wasn't just taking photos. She was curating a narrative of a perfect, unblemished family unit. And for reasons I couldn't fathom, my son didn't fit into her edited version of reality. I noticed how she would meticulously plan the outfits for her children, coordinating colors with her sister's kids. I saw how she'd bring her own professional-grade camera, not trusting anyone else's smartphone to capture the moment with the right depth of field. The photos were her currency of family pride, shared on social media with hashtags like #FamilyFirst and Blessed. Each post was a small, public sting, a confirmation of our exclusion. I tried talking to Mark again. One evening in early autumn, with the scent of rain in the air, I sat him down. "Mark, it's going to happen again at Christmas," I said, my voice low and steady. "The photo. Sam is going to be left out. He's old enough to be deeply hurt by it now. We have to say something." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. It was his tell, the gesture that meant he wanted to avoid a difficult conversation. "Eleanor, are we really going to do this again? You know how Amanda is. She gets this picture in her head. It's not personal, it's just her way." "Not personal?" I stared at him, incredulous. Mark, it is the definition of personal. It's the deliberate, repeated exclusion of our son. Your nephew. Your blood. How can you not see that? You're making it bigger than it is. It's just a silly picture. It's not just a picture. My voice cracked, the control I was holding onto threatening to shatter. It's a message. It tells our son he's not one of them. It tells him he's less than. Is that a message you're okay with sending him? The conversation went in circles, ending as it always did, with his plea to just keep the peace and my feeling of utter isolation. It was then that I knew I was truly on my own. If I wanted to protect my son, I couldn't rely on my husband. My quiet rebellion wouldn't be quiet at all. It would be a flashbulb moment. My plan began to take shape in October. I spent an evening researching local photographers, not wedding or family portrait specialists, but paparazzi, or at least photographers who specialized in candid event-style shots. I found a man named George whose online portfolio was full of vibrant, unstaged photos from parties and corporate events. He had a knack for capturing the lifeblood of a moment, not just the posed smiles. I called him the next day. I have a slightly unusual request, I began, pacing my kitchen. I explained the situation, feeling a little foolish as I laid out the years of petty exclusion. I'm not looking for a traditional family portrait, I said. In fact, I'm looking for the opposite. I want you to come to my brother-in-law's Christmas gathering. I want you to be discreet, blend in, and I want you to focus on my son, Sam. I want you to capture him playing, laughing, interacting with his family. I want you to capture the moments they refuse to see. There was a pause on the other end of the line. So, let me get this straight, George said, his voice intrigued. You want me to professionally photograph the moments before the official family photo that your son is excluded from? And after, I confirmed. I want a record of his joy, his presence. I want to create our own set of family photos, the real ones. And at the moment of the official photo? He asked. A slow, determined smile spread across my face. Oh, for that moment, I said. I have a very specific shot in mind. We agreed on a price and a plan. George would arrive an hour into the party, dressed as a guest. He would have a top-of-the-line camera, but he would be subtle. As Christmas drew nearer, a nervous energy buzzed beneath my skin. It wasn't just about proving a point anymore. It was about reclaiming my son's place, about creating a new narrative, one captured through a lens of truth, not Amanda's curated fiction. This year, there would be a picture, and everyone was going to be in it. Christmas Day arrived, wrapped in a blanket of crisp, cold air. The tension in our car on the way to Mark's brother's house was a tangible thing, a third passenger sitting silently between us. Mark was humming along to a carol on the radio, a forced cheerfulness that grated on my raw nerves. Sam, in the back seat, was oblivious, chattering excitedly about the presents he hoped to get from his grandparents. His innocence was a fragile shield, and I felt a fierce primal urge to protect it at all costs. As we walked through the familiar front door, the assault of smells, pine, turkey, Amanda's cloyingly sweet perfume, hit me. The usual greetings erupted, boisterous hugs from my father-in-law, air kisses from the women. I moved through it all on autopilot, my smile feeling like a mask I'd painted on. My eyes scanned the room, looking for the best vantage points, the clearest lines of sight. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. An hour into the festivities, George arrived. He was perfect. Dressed in nondescript trousers and a holiday-themed sweater that was just cheesy enough to be believable, he looked like a friend of a cousin, a +1 nobody would question. He gave me a subtle nod as he accepted a drink from my brother-in-law, and then he simply melted into the background. And then, the magic began. Through the throng of people, I would catch glimpses of George. He'd be kneeling by the roaring fireplace, his lens focused on Sam as my son explained the intricacies of his new Lego spaceship to his grandfather. Click. He'd be half hidden behind the enormous Christmas tree, capturing the exact moment Sam burst into a fit of giggles as his uncle made a silly face. Click. He caught Sam stealing a cookie from the dessert table, his eyes wide and mischievous. He caught him curled up on an armchair with the family's ancient golden retriever, his small hand stroking the dog's soft fur. George was a ghost, a silent chronicler of the moments that Amanda's curated narrative always missed. He was capturing the truth of my son, that he was not an outsider, an addendum, a footnote. He was a vibrant, living, breathing part of this family. With every discreet click of George's camera, a piece of the knot in my stomach loosened. I was building my own arsenal of memories, my own undeniable proof. I found myself able to genuinely smile, to engage in conversation without the bitter undertone of resentment that usually colored my interactions. Mark, noticing my lighter mood, squeezed my hand. See? It's nice, isn't it? Just relaxing and enjoying the family. I gave him a non-committal smile. He had no idea. The afternoon wore on, a comfortable rhythm of food, drink, and conversation settling over the house. And then it came. The clarion call I had been waiting for. Photo time! Amanda's voice, bright and commanding, sliced through the relaxed atmosphere. Everyone! By the fireplace! Grandparents in the chairs, you know the drill? A Pavlovian response rippled through the room. People began to move, arranging themselves into the familiar pyramid of genetic hierarchy. My father-in-law and mother-in-law settled into the two wingback chairs that served as the thrones for this annual ceremony. Their children, Mark, his brother, and his sister, flanked them, and then the grandchildren were called forward. Liam! Chloe! Jessica! Come on, get in front of Grandpa! Amanda called to her own children and her sister's daughter. This was the moment. The precipice. I took a steadying breath, my gaze flickering towards George, who was now positioned near the entryway, his camera held loosely at his side. Ready. I gave him the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. His eyes met mine, and I saw a glint of professional readiness. I took Sam's hand. He was looking at the cluster of cousins, a hopeful, expectant look on his face. This year he was old enough to want to be included, to feel he belonged there. Mommy, can I go in the picture? He whispered, his voice a hopeful little bird. Of course you can, sweetie, I said, my voice much calmer than I felt. I started to walk him forward, a slow, deliberate procession towards the fireplace. As if on cue, Amanda's head snapped towards us. The syrupy sweet smile was in place, but her eyes were like chips of ice. She put a hand out, a perfectly manicured barrier. Oh, Eleanor, she said, the familiar words dripping with false regret. Let's just get one of the grandkids who are here all the time. It's just quicker this way before the light changes. 4 years of swallowed anger, of bitten tongues, of silent tears, coalesced into a single point of crystalline focus. I looked at her hand, then back at her face. I did not step back. I did not pull my son away. I smiled, a real smile this time, wide and sharp. No, I said. The word hung in the air, small and yet as loud as a thunderclap. Amanda's smile faltered. She blinked, as if she hadn't heard me correctly. The low chatter in the room died down as a few people nearby turned to look. Mark, who had been positioning himself behind his father, looked over at me, his expression a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. I'm sorry, Amanda said, a brittle edge to her voice. I said no, I repeated, my voice clear and unwavering. You've taken that photo for 4 years, Amanda. This year, we're going to take a real family photo, and Sam is going to be in it. I squeezed Sam's hand, a silent promise. He is a grandchild. He belongs here. I had thrown the first stone. Now I held my breath, waiting for the ripples. The silence that followed my refusal was profound. It was a vacuum, sucking the air and festive cheer out of the room. Amanda's face, a moment ago arranged in a mask of pleasant condescension, was now frozen in disbelief. Her mouth was slightly agape, the syrupy words she was about to say having died on her lips. Across the room, I saw my father-in-law shift uncomfortably in his armchair. My mother-in-law's hands fluttered in her lap. The cousins, caught in their prearranged poses, looked back and forth between Amanda and me, their smiles stiffening. And Mark. I saw the panic flash in his eyes. He looked at me, a silent plea to stand down, to not do this, to not shatter the fragile peace he valued so highly. Amanda was the first to recover. She let out a short, sharp laugh, a sound utterly devoid of humor. Eleanor, don't be dramatic, she said, her voice a low, warning hiss. We're losing the light. Don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene, I replied, my voice still level, though it took every ounce of my willpower to keep it from trembling. I am simply including my son in a family photograph. It's you who is making this an issue. He's not one of the main grandkids, she snapped, her voice rising. The pretense was gone, the ugly truth of her prejudice laid bare for all to hear. A collective intake of breath was audible from several people in the room. Sam looked up at me, his small face clouded with confusion. What's a main grandkid, Mommy? That was it. That was the spark that ignited the final reserve of my resolve. I looked from Sam's innocent face to Amanda's twisted one. There are no main grandkids, Amanda, I said, my voice dangerously cold. There are only grandchildren, and you will not treat my son as a second-class member of this family. Not anymore. For God's sake, Amanda, just let the boy in the picture. My brother-in-law, her own husband, muttered, clearly mortified. Amanda shot him a look of pure venom. She turned to her brother, my husband. Mark, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Are you going to let her ruin Christmas? All eyes swiveled to Mark. It was the moment of truth, the culmination of 4 years of his passive complicity. I held my breath. I saw the war in his eyes, the ingrained habit of placating his sister versus the dawning realization of the damage his silence had caused. He looked at me, standing there with my hand firmly on our son's shoulder, a silent warrior defending her child. He looked at Sam, whose lower lip had begun to tremble. And then, he moved. He stepped away from his position behind his father's chair and walked across the small space that separated us. He didn't stop at my side. He walked past me, directly to his sister. That's enough, Amanda, he said, his voice quiet but laced with a firmness I hadn't heard from him in years. He's my son. He is a grandchild. He will be in the picture. He then turned, came back to me, and put his arm around my shoulders, squeezing gently. He looked down at Sam and smiled. Come on, champ. Let's get in there, right in the middle. Amanda stared at her brother, her face a mask of betrayal and incandescent rage. This was a mutiny she had never anticipated. For a moment, I thought she might scream or throw her camera. I saw her clench her fists, but the eyes of her entire family were upon her. She was trapped. Fine, she spat, the word cracking in the tense air. Fine, ruin it. I don't care. She stomped over to her husband and thrust the camera into his hands. Here, you take it. I don't even want to look. She stormed back to the group, positioning herself at the far edge, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, a thunderous expression on her face. Mark guided Sam and me into the heart of the group. With a defiant flourish, he nudged one of the cousins aside and placed Sam directly in front of his grandparents, the undeniable center of the frame. I stood behind him, Mark's arm still a solid, reassuring weight on my shoulders. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw George. He hadn't moved from his spot, but his camera was up. He wasn't pointed at the family group. He was pointed at Amanda. Click. He captured her face of unadulterated fury. Then he panned slightly, capturing Mark's resolute expression as he stood by me. Click. He captured the awkward, stunned faces of the other relatives. Click. He was documenting the implosion of a carefully constructed myth. Amanda's husband fumbled with the camera. Okay, everyone say cheese, he mumbled. A pathetic, ragged cheese echoed in the room. I looked directly into the lens, a triumphant, unapologetic smile on my face. Mark looked proud. Sam, sandwiched between the warmth of his grandparents, offered a genuine gap-toothed grin, oblivious to the drama that had secured his place. The rest of the smiles in the photograph were strained, tight, and utterly false. The flash went off, immortalizing the most honest family portrait we had ever taken. The moment it was over, the fragile tableau shattered. Amanda snatched the camera back from her husband and refused to speak to or look at anyone. The party atmosphere was irrevocably broken. Conversations were stilted, whispered. We didn't stay long after that. I gathered our coats, and our goodbyes were a series of stiff, awkward hugs. Amanda turned her back on us completely. The car door closed, encasing the three of us in a sudden, heavy silence. It was a different silence from the one on the drive over. This was the quiet after the storm. I looked at Mark in the driver's seat. He was staring straight ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel. He turned to me, his eyes full of a profound, regretful clarity. I'm sorry, Eleanor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I am so sorry. I should have done that 4 years ago. Tears I hadn't realized I was holding back began to well in my eyes, blurring the passing Christmas lights into streaks of hazy color. I just needed you to be on my team, I whispered, the words thick with 4 years of accumulated pain. On our team. I know, Mark said, his own voice cracking. He reached over and took my hand, his grip firm and grounding. I was a coward. I kept telling myself it was a small thing, a silly picture. But it wasn't. It was about our son. It was about you. I saw your face when Amanda spoke to you, and it was like I was seeing it for the first time. The years of it. I'm so sorry I let my fear of her temper be bigger than my love for you and Sam. He drove in silence for a few moments, and I watched his profile, the hard set of his jaw, the regret etched around his eyes. He had failed, yes, but in this moment of raw honesty, something broken between us began to mend. The chasm of resentment I had felt for so long started to close. He had finally seen. He had finally stepped up. In the back seat, Sam, blissfully unaware of the adult earthquake that had just occurred, was humming to himself, tapping his new Lego spaceship against the window. He was safe, he was happy, and for the first time in 4 holiday seasons, so was I. A week later, an email from George arrived with the subject line, "Your Christmas Story." I opened the link with a trembling finger. There were hundreds of photos. My breath caught in my throat. They were beautiful, breathtakingly so. George hadn't just taken pictures. He had captured life. There was Sam, his face alight with pure joy as he opened a gift from his aunt. There he was, in deep, serious conversation with his grandfather by the fire. There was a stolen shot of me watching him, a soft, unguarded love on my face that I rarely saw in myself. George had captured Sam not as an accessory or an afterthought, but as the vibrant central character he was. He had given me the gift of seeing my son through a lens of unbiased affection. And then there were the other photos. The sequence of the confrontation was a cinematic masterpiece of domestic drama. It started with Amanda's hand outstretched, her face a mask of condescending sweetness, my face resolute and unmoving. Then the shock on her face when I said, "No." The panic in Mark's eyes, followed by his slow, deliberate walk across the room. The series ended with 3 incredible shots. Amanda's face contorted in a silent scream of fury, Mark's hand on my shoulder, his expression a mixture of defiance and profound apology. And finally, the official family photo itself. It was a work of art. In the center, Sam's bright, innocent grin was the sun around which a solar system of dysfunctional emotions revolved. My triumphant smile, Mark's protective pride. And scattered around us, the strained, awkward, and downright miserable faces of the rest of the family. Amanda looked like she had swallowed poison. My father-in-law looked deeply ashamed. It was the truest family portrait they had ever taken, a perfect monument to a lie being shattered. The fallout was swift and predictable. Amanda sent a single, blistering text to Mark, declaring she would never forgive me for humiliating her in her own home. She unfriended me on all social media. We received no New Year's calls from that side of the family, save for one. It was my mother-in-law. She called me a few days into January, her voice hesitant. "Eleanor," she began, I want to apologize. I never said anything. It was easier not to. But what you did? It was brave. And you were right. Sam is our grandson. We let Amanda's fussiness dictate things for too long. I'm ashamed of that. It was an unexpected crack of light in the frosty silence. It wasn't a full pardon, and it wouldn't magically fix everything. But it was a start. That weekend, I took my final step. I didn't print the photos of the confrontation. They were for me, a private reminder of my own strength. I didn't need to display the evidence of my victory on the wall. Living it was enough. Instead, I printed dozens of George's other photos, the candid shots. I bought a large, beautiful scrapbook with a simple, elegant cover. On the first page, I placed the official family photo, the one with all the tense faces. And beneath it, I wrote, "Christmas, Year 4. Then I began to fill the rest of the pages. Page after page of Sam. Sam laughing, Sam playing, Sam hugging his cousins, who, free from their mother's puppeteering, had played with him all afternoon. Sam with his grandparents, Sam with Mark, Sam with me. I created a vibrant, joyful, and complete narrative of his day. A narrative where he was not just present, but cherished. The final page of the scrapbook held a single large photo. It was a shot George had taken as we were leaving. Mark was holding the door open, his hand on my back. I was holding Sam's hand, and we were all looking at each other, caught in a private, intimate moment of shared relief and love. We were a unit. We were a team. That evening, I sat on the sofa with Sam, the open scrapbook on our laps. He pointed to the pictures, his small finger tracing the outlines of his own happy face. "That's me with Grandpa," he said. And that's when I ate the cookie. He paused on the official family photo, the one from the fireplace. He looked at it for a long moment, his brow furrowed in thought. "That picture is silly," he finally declared with the simple, profound wisdom of a child. "Everyone looks grumpy. I like the other ones better." I pulled him close, kissing the top of his sandy-haired head. "Me too, sweetie," I said, a genuine, unburdened smile spreading across my face as I looked at the album filled with our truth. "I like the other ones much, much better."